Let's settle down, please, and we're going to go to, we skipped one last time, so we're going to go first to Zone 4.
Hello. My name's Nelson Arata. I'm from Southern California, and I have a question. It's not really related to intrinsic value or any of that stock stuff, but more on houses. I'm still quite young. I don't have a house yet, and I'm thinking about buying a house someday soon. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to put a down payment, which means I might have to share or sell my shares. And I was wondering if you can provide some insight on when is the best time to buy a house and how much down payment you should be putting down in relation to interest rates and also in relation to available cash and the stock market.
Well, Charlie's going to give you an answer to that in a second. I'll just relate one story, which was when I got married. We did have about $10,000 starting off, and I told Susie, I said, now, you know, there's two choices. It's up to you. We can either buy a house, which will use up all my capital, clean me out, and it'll be like a carpenter who's had his tools taken away from him, or you can let me work on this, and someday, who knows, maybe I'll even buy a little bit larger house than would otherwise be the case. So she was very understanding on that point, and we waited until 1956. We got married in 1952, and I decided to buy a house when the down payment was about 10% or so of my net worth, because I really felt I wanted to use the capital for other purposes. But that was a way different environment in terms of what was available to buy. In effect, if you have the house you want to buy, I definitely believe in just going out and probably getting the job done. But in effect, you're probably making something in the area of a 7 or 8% investment implicitly when you do it. So, you'll have to figure out your own equation from that. Charlie probably has better advice on that. He's a big homeowner in both senses of the word.
I think the time to buy a house is when you need one.
And when do you need one?
Well, I have very old-fashioned ideas on that too. The single people, I don't care if they ever get a house.
When do you need one if you're married, Charlie? I'll follow up here for that. You need one when your wife wants one.
Yes. I think you've got that exactly right.
Yeah. Sure.
Gregory Crawford needs to go to the security office, please, for emergency message. Gregory Crawford to the security office for emergency message. Thank you.
Okay. Hope it isn't a margin call. Okay, we'll go to Zone 1, please.
I'm Ralph Pfeffer from Phoenix, Arizona. The question I'm going to ask does not pertain to Berkshire Hathaway, but I would appreciate it if you gentlemen, if you can, explain the justification and rationalization for the exorbitant salaries, bonuses, perks, directors' fees, and other benefits that most public corporations are paying.
Well, I would say this. In my own view, the most exorbitant are not necessarily the biggest numbers. What really bothers me is when companies pay a lot of money for mediocrity, and that happens all too often. But we have no quarrel in our subsidiaries, for example, for paying a lot of money for outstanding performance. I mean, we get it back 10 or 20 or 50 for one. And similarly, in public companies, we think that there have been managers and are managers who have taken companies to many, many, many billions of market value, more than would have happened with virtually anyone else. And they sometimes take a lot of money for that. Sometimes, as in the case of Tom Murphy at Cap Cities, it just didn't make a difference to him. I mean, he performed in a way that would have justified huge sums, but it wasn't. I mean, he would tell you that he had all the money he needed, and he just didn't care to take what the market might bear. But I am bothered by irrational pay systems, and I'm particularly bothered when average managers take really large sums. I'm bothered when they design or have designed for them systems that are very costly to the company, maybe partly to make themselves look good because they want huge options themselves, so they feel like they give options widely throughout the company. So they design a system that is illogical company-wide because they want one that's illogical for them personally. But large sums per se don't bother me. I'm not saying, whether any individual might want to take them or not. But I do not mind paying a lot of money for performance. It's done in athletics, it's done in entertainment, but in business, the people who are the 200 hitters and the people who would not attract a crowd as an entertainer have worked it out so that, I mean, the system has evolved in such a way that many of them take huge sums, and I think that's obscene, but I can tell you there isn't much you can do about it. The system feeds on itself, and companies do look at other companies' proxy statements. Every CEO does, and they say, well, if Joe Smith is worth X, I have to be worth more, and they tell the directors that certainly you wouldn't be hiring anybody that was below average, so how can you pay me below average? And the consultants come in and ratchet up the rewards, and it's not anything that's going to go away. It's like we were talking about campaign finance reform earlier. The people who have their hands on the switch are the beneficiaries of the system. Who have their hands on the switch are the beneficiaries of the system, benefiting enormously and perhaps disproportionately from that system. Charlie?
Well, yeah, I'd like to report that the original Vanderbilt behaved even better than the people at Berkshire Hathaway. He didn't take any salary at all. He thought it was beneath him as a significant shareholder to take a salary. That ideal, I'm afraid, died with him.
Yeah, Charlie and I, our directors are paid $900 a year, but I tell them on an hourly basis they're making a fortune because we don't work them that hard. But what Charlie and I did not think through when we established that $900 a year is that they set our salaries too. So we have not followed the standard procedure, which is to load it on the directors, and the directors shall load it on you.
I do think it will have pernicious effects for the country.
Load it on you.
I do think it will have pernicious effects for the country. It's escalating because I think you're getting at the very top, corporate salaries in America are too high. And that is not a good thing for a civilization when the leaders are regarded as not dealing fairly with the institutions that they head. All I can say is that prostitution would be a step up for them.
Put him down as undecided. Zone 5.
Hello, Mr. Buffett and Mr. Munger. My name is James Claus from New York City, and I just wanted to ask you a question. Both you and Mr. Munger have repeatedly said that you don't believe that business valuation is being taught correctly at our universities. And as a PhD student at Columbia Business School, that troubles me understandably, because in a couple of years I'll be joining the ranks of those teaching business valuation. My question isn't what sources such as Graham or Fisher or Mr. Munger's talks you would point people that are teaching business valuation to, but do you have any counsel about the techniques of teaching business valuation?
Well, I was lucky. I had a sensational teacher in Ben Graham, and we had a course there. There's at least one fellow out in the audience here that attended with me, and just Ben made it terribly interesting. What we did was we walked into that class and we valued companies, and he had various little games he would play with us. Sometimes he would have us evaluate company A and company B with a whole bunch of figures, and then we would find out that A and B were the same company at different points in its history, for example. And there were a lot of little games he played to get us to think about what were the key variables and, you know, how could we go off the track. I remember one time Ben met with Charlie and me and about 9 or so other people down in San Diego in 1968 or so, and he gave all of us a little true-false test, and we all thought we were pretty smart. We all flunked, but that was his way of teaching us that a smart man playing his own game and working at fooling you could do a pretty good job at it. But I would, you know, if I were teaching a course on investments, there would be simply one valuation study after another with the students trying to identify the key variables in that particular business and evaluating how predictable they were first, because that is the first step. If something is not very predictable, forget it. You know, you don't have to be right about every company. You have to make a few good decisions in your lifetime. But then when you find, the important thing is to know when you find one where you really do know the key variables, which ones are important, and you do think you've got a fix on them. Where we've done well, Charlie and I made a dozen or so very big decisions relative to net worth, but not as big as they should have been. And we've known we were right based on those going in. I mean, they just weren't that complicated, and we knew we were focusing on the right variables and that they were dominant. And we knew that even though we couldn't take it out to 5 decimal places or anything like that, we knew that in a general way we were right about them. And that's what we look for, the fat pitch. And that's what I would be trying to teach students to do. And I would not try to teach them to think they could do the impossible. Charlie?
Yes, if you're planning to teach business valuation, and what you hope to do is teach the way people teach real estate appraising. So you can take any company, and your students, after studying your course, will be able to give you an appraisal of that company, which will indicate really its future prospects compared to its market price. I think you're attempting the impossible.
Yeah, probably on the final exam, I would take an internet company, and I would say the final exam, the question is, how much is this worth? And anybody that gave me an answer, I would flunk.
Right.